You just got a call from your M&A advisor. Big number, bigger than you expected. He's smiling, and you should be too, right? But here's what he's not telling you. Over the past 24 months, our clients have exited over $600 million of business value. And that's after 17 years managing institutional money on Wall Street as a CFA and CPA. And what I've seen over and over in transactions is that the number your advisor is celebrating because he's gonna get paid. It's not what lands in your account, and it's not even close. By the time you find out how far off it is actually, the deal is already signed. So before you go and pop the champagne, give your wife a kiss, let's talk about what actually happens between that number and the number in your bank account. Your M&A advisor gets paid to prepare your business's financials and the presentation of it to a slew of buyers. They take your business out and they create an auction where they can get multiple buyers to bid on your business to hopefully create competition so they can take the highest price. The deal structure matters on multiple levels. First, if you have a C Corp versus an S Corp versus an LLC taxed as a partnership, those can all have different consequences on how much tax you end up paying. And then if you match the actual structure of the business from a legal perspective, and then the structure of the transaction, whether a sale, either stock or asset sale, can lead to either beneficial or negative tax consequences. Business owners don't think about the structure of their entity and how much tax they're going to pay on a sale because they're so consumed with actually running their business. And they're typically also consumed by just paying less tax year in and year out if they're actually working with a value-driven CPA, which most aren't. So business owners, they're focused on the deal, they're focused on due diligence, they're focused on running their business and keeping everything afloat while they go into the process to sell. So I think there's good M&A advisors and there's less good M&A advisors. The really good M&A advisors, they realize that business owners are gonna have a huge tax bill after they sell their business. So they consider structure and they work collaboratively with wealth strategists that can incorporate all the disciplines and how you can save money on taxes on a business sale. But if you think about an M&A advisor in general, particularly one that is an adept at managing these taxes and all the competing interests, all they care about is getting their fee. And their fee isn't calculated on after-tax returns. It's calculated maybe 4 to 10% on the actual headline number, what the buyer is paying for the entire business, and they don't worry about taxes. And that's the category of just the unsophisticated, bad M&A advisor. Let me give you an example. Imagine you have a $10 million business sale. The advisor fee on that business is likely to be $500,000 to $1 million. Let's assume that this M&A advisor has somewhere between a 5% fee in order to sell the business and a 10% fee. So that's great for them. But what you actually keep, you have to first subtract the M&A advisor fee, and then you need to subtract taxes. And depending on the state you live, that can be anywhere from 20 to nearly 35% of money that you have to give to the IRS and to the state government. So while your M&A advisor is getting paid on the $10 million headline number, what you keep is somewhere between $6 million and $7.4 million. And not to mention, you then have to pay off your debts. If you have vehicle debt, if you have business debt that was related to growth, and maybe there's a few key employees that you want to bonus out after the sale, that all comes off of the top as well, but after taxes. Like a common situation that people run into is that they do no tax planning before the deal and they wait till the close. They're so focused on running their business, going through the due diligence process, that they don't even think about taxes and think, well, I have time to deal with that later. I'll call my CPA after the deal closes. But by then it's too late. So from a long-term investment standpoint, if you actually execute tax planning and know the structures that can significantly save money on taxes, even up to 50% lower taxes, it can be the difference between keeping $6 million to $7.4 million or $8 million to, let's say, $9 million on a transaction, which is a significant difference. I mean, imagine the numbers. If you have $2 million more and you were to earn, let's say, a 10% return on that $2 million, that's an additional $200,000 every year that you could potentially earn in pre-tax returns that you could fund 20 vacations with you and your family. You could, buy a vacation home and use that money to pay the mortgage. There's a multitude of things that you could do to improve the quality of your life just by saving taxes up front. If you're selling your pest control company right now, you're already talking to buyers, you have an M&A advisor, or you're even expecting an offer soon, don't wait until the documents are finalized to figure out what you'll actually keep. So we help owners with the structure, uncover avoidable tax exposure, and plan what happens to the money after the close. So use the link below to apply before you sign the deal. So right around the time where you're planning on signing the letter of intent or the LOI, there are some key pieces and key people that you need in place. You need a wealth strategist that understands trust and estate, tax, and investments, because through that structure, you can engineer an outcome to have the most after-tax money. You also need an M&A attorney, not someone who's your local attorney or your business attorney, someone that's done hundreds of M&A transactions. And then some of these folks, particularly the wealth strategist, can put you in touch with a value-added CPA that could also help with some of the tax planning. And if you don't have an M&A advisor and you're signing an LOI, it's not too late to call one just to get a second opinion on the overall valuation of the company and the deal structure. And look, they have a lot of incentive to talk you out of the deal, which is fine. Then you have that devil advocacy talking to you about the other side of the deal that you're ready to sign. Oftentimes, all of those advisors are rowing in the same direction, but they might not be talking to one another. So it's important to have someone who's leading that process. I think of it as your family office director who's coordinating trust and estate, CPA, potentially M&A advisor, in order to work to the best outcome for the client. Once the LOI is signed and then 60 to 90 days later, the deal closes, now you went from having a business with almost your entire net worth to this pile of cash. It's critically important at that point to create a personal cash flow forecast in order to ultimately understand what you own in terms of like your whole balance sheet and assets, what you spend, what you earn potentially in other businesses, and then what return you're likely to get on all of these investments. But the problem is that most business owners, they go from running a business like a professional, and then they go to having this portfolio and thinking about managing it essentially like an amateur, because it's not what they do day in and day out. So being able to thoughtfully model out these scenarios and portfolio assumptions in order to ensure that this money not only supports your lifestyle needs, but continues to grow across generations to create a large amount of after-tax wealth. Yes. So when someone's running the business and they're the sole decision maker in creating the business value over time before they ultimately sell it, they're used to having the direct impact on their overall wealth and the value of their company. However, they don't have necessarily the skill set to run a portfolio, just like I don't have the skill set to run a pest control company or a lawn and landscape company. So what happens is that they revert to their natural instincts, and I've seen it. They go and they start buying private businesses. But unfortunately, they don't always buy businesses in the industry where they made their money. They go out and buy businesses in potentially less attractive businesses, but also in areas that they don't understand with the same depth of the business that they just sold. So inevitably, this leads to a lot of value destruction. And now all of a sudden, these folks went from having generational wealth to now having a job because they're trying to manage all these disparate businesses that they went out and acquired. So managing money for a business owner is very different than managing money for a corporate executive that has squirreled away money and invested it in public markets over the years. The psychology is very different, which requires a different approach to actually managing the money. So we start slow with our clients and try to design portfolios that have far less volatility, but yet still generate competitive returns versus the equity markets. So having portfolios that have exposure to all types of economic environments creates that environment where business owners aren't looking at their portfolio that just went down potentially 35%. If a traditional wealth manager would have just stuck them in an equity-only portfolio, and inevitably you have a crash. So if your pest control business would sell for north of $10 million, or there's already a deal in motion, click the link below, answer the 4 questions, and book a call on the next page. That call happens before you sign because that's when I can still change your outcome. If you're not at that stage yet, then subscribe to the channel, and the day a buyer gets serious, come back and fill out the form. That's the day that it matters.